Hello, my friends. Welcome back to Timeless Stories. It is so good to have you here. Let us take a breath together. Imagine a quiet garage in California. The evening air is cool. A single light bulb hangs above a wooden workbench. Wires lie across the table in careful rows. A young man bends over a small machine, his eyes focused, his hands steady. Outside, the neighborhood is still. Inside, something is being born. Something that will one day reach into the hands of billions of people around the world. That young man is Steve Jobs. And this is his story. How does one person, starting with almost nothing, change the way the whole world works? How does someone who never finished university build the most valuable company on earth? And how does a man who loses everything he loves find his way back and build something even greater? Today, we are going to walk together through the life of Steve Jobs. We are going to discover where his vision came from, how he fell and rose again, and what his story can still teach us today. And near the end, we will share one small and surprising detail from Steve's early life. A detail that seems unimportant at first, but that quietly shaped the way millions of people read words on a screen. So, make yourself comfortable, take a breath, and let the story begin. Steve Jobs was born on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco, California. His beginning was quiet and complicated. His birth parents could not raise him. So he was placed for adoption and welcomed into the home of Paul and Clara Jobs. They were not wealthy people, but they gave him something more valuable than money. They gave him a safe home, patient love, and space to be curious. Paul Jobs worked with his hands. He repaired cars and small machines in the garage. Steve watched carefully. He learned early that good work is not only about function, it is also about care, about patience, about attending to every small detail. These early lessons never left him. Steve was not a quiet, ordinary child. He asked many questions. He opened toys to see how they worked. He studied small machines with great focus. School did not always fit him. The lessons felt too slow. The rules felt too small. Sometimes he caused trouble. But behind that restless energy, there was a bright and searching mind. He was not trying to follow the usual path. He was already learning how to see things differently. At age 10, the Jobs family moved to Los Altos, California. This town sat near the heart of what would later become known as Silicon Valley, a place where new technology and big ideas were beginning to grow. One day, Steve saw a computer for the first time. It was enormous, almost like a piece of furniture. But to Steve, it looked like a doorway. Something deep inside him woke up. And so a question began to form. A question that would guide the rest of his life. What could this machine do if it belonged to everyone? In high school, Steve met another young man named Steve Wozniak. Wozniak was quiet and brilliant. He could build clever electronic devices from small parts, working with a kind of focused joy that most people could not understand. The two Steves became close friends because they shared the same excitement, a deep love for technology and a bold desire to build things with their own hands. Together, they created a device called the Blue Box. This small machine could make free telephone calls by copying the exact tones used by the telephone company. It was not legal, but it showed something very important about both of them. They were not afraid. They were inventive, and they had begun to understand the power of building things themselves. For Steve, the Blue Box was more than a clever trick. It was a lesson. If two young people in a suburban garage could outsmart a giant telephone company, what else might be possible? Steve entered Reed College in Oregon, but after only 6 months, he left. He could not ask his parents to spend money on a path that felt wrong to him. They had saved carefully for his education, and he would not waste their sacrifice on something that did not feel true. So he made a difficult choice. A difficult choice. He left his official studies behind. He stayed near the college campus and followed classes that genuinely interested him. One of those classes was calligraphy. Calligraphy is the art of beautiful, careful handwriting. It has nothing to do with computers. It has nothing to do with technology. But Steve was fascinated. He studied the shapes of letters, the space between words, the way a font could feel warm or cold, gentle or strong. At the time, it seemed like a useless hobby. But it was not useless. It was a seed. In 1974, Steve traveled to India. He was not looking for fame. He was not looking for money. He was searching for something quieter, for meaning, for focus, for a deeper understanding of himself and the world. When he returned to America, something had shifted. His dream was no longer simply to build machines. He wanted to build tools that could touch human life. Tools that could feel almost alive in someone's hands. Now, here is where the story becomes interesting. In 1976, at the age of 21, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak began Apple Computer in the Jobs family garage. There was no grand office, no rich team of investors, no perfect business plan. Only two young men, a handful of tools, one borrowed workbench, and a single, powerful belief. Computers should not belong only to large companies or university laboratories. They should belong to ordinary people. Their first product was called the Apple I. It was simple, it was rough, but it was full of possibility. Steve wanted more than a clever machine. He wanted a computer that a normal family could bring home, turn on, and use without reading a long manual. That dream became the Apple II. The Apple II had color graphics. It was ready to use from the first moment. It felt less like a machine for experts and more like a tool for students. Teachers, families, and small businesses. The Apple II made Apple grow very fast. Steve became a millionaire at only 23 years old. But Steve was not only interested in money. He was interested in something harder to name. He cared about the feeling of things, the weight of a product in your hand, the sound it made when you turned it on, the color of its casing. He expected every detail to be exactly right. If one small thing felt wrong, he wanted it fixed. Some people found him too demanding, too difficult, too intense. But Steve believed something deeply. Greatness comes from care. For him, good enough was never enough. By the early 1980s, Steve had a new dream. He wanted to create a different kind of computer. Not cold, not complicated, not only for experts. He wanted a machine that felt friendly, almost human. He wanted ordinary people to feel welcome when they sat down in front of it. That dream became the Macintosh. The Macintosh used something new, a mouse and a visual screen filled with small pictures called icons. Instead of typing long, difficult commands, a person could simply move the mouse and click. The screen showed you exactly what was happening. For Steve, this was what technology should always do. It should help people create. It should make them feel capable, not small. The Macintosh arrived with a bold and confident message. Apple was not like other companies. It was building tools for freedom, for creativity, for people who wanted to think differently. And the world began to notice. But the story did not end there. In 1985, the story turned painful. Steve's strong ideas and demanding personality had created deep conflict inside Apple. He pushed hard. He wanted control over every product, every decision, every detail. Many people inside the company felt exhausted by his pressure. Disagreements grew, trust broke down. And then the Apple board of directors made a shocking decision. They pushed Steve Jobs out of the company he had helped create. For Steve, this was a deep wound. The dream that had begun in that quiet garage was now closed to him. The company that carried his name had asked him to leave. He felt lost. He felt angry. And for a time, he did not know what came next. But Steve was not a person who stayed still for long. He created a new company called NXT, with the hope of building powerful computers for universities and businesses. He also made a quieter investment in a small animation studio called Pixar. At the time, Pixar was struggling. It had bright ideas, but little money. Steve believed in it anyway. He continued to support it, even when success felt far away. Years later, that quiet studio would create some of the most beloved animated films ever made. It would change the future of storytelling on screen. But in those early years, nobody could have predicted that. Steve simply believed, and he kept going. In those same years, something else was happening. Apple, without Steve, was losing its way. The company had too many products, too many problems, too little direction. By the middle of the 1990s, Apple was in serious trouble. People inside the company were afraid. People outside the company had stopped believing. And then, in 1997, something unexpected happened. Apple brought Steve Jobs back. The man they had pushed away became the person they needed most. If you enjoy calm stories about people who shaped the modern world, consider subscribing to Timeless Stories. New stories arrive every week. When Steve returned to Apple, he did not try to fix everything at once. He moved carefully. He made Apple smaller, clearer, and calmer. He removed products that did not matter. He asked one hard question again and again. What should we truly build? By saying no to many things, Apple found its focus again. In 1998, Steve introduced the iMac. It looked nothing like the gray, heavy computers people knew. It was colorful, it was friendly, it was simple. People noticed it immediately. They talked about it. They wanted to own it. The iMac was not only beautiful, it was also powerful and easy to use. Its success gave Apple new life. After years of fear and confusion, the company began to breathe again. Steve also made a difficult and unexpected choice during this time. He opened a conversation with Microsoft, Apple's biggest competitor. A competitor is a company that competes with you, that tries to win the same customers. Many of Apple's most loyal fans were angry. They felt it was a betrayal. But Steve understood something practical. Pride could not save the company. Apple needed help, patience, and time to recover. The agreement with Microsoft gave Apple room to grow strong again. Sometimes, wisdom means choosing survival before victory. In 2001, Apple introduced the iPod. It was small, clean, and beautifully simple. Steve described it in a way that everyone understood immediately. He called it 1,000 songs in your pocket. Before the iPod, people carried music on compact discs, round plastic discs that scratched easily and broke if you dropped them. Music players were heavy, complicated, and difficult to carry. The iPod changed all of that. Now music felt personal. It felt free. You could carry your whole life's music in the palm of your hand. The iPod did not only change how people listened, it changed how they moved through the world. And this was only the beginning. In 2007, Steve Jobs walked onto a stage in San Francisco and changed daily life for millions of people. He was wearing his usual simple outfit, dark turtleneck, blue jeans, white sneakers. He spoke calmly. He smiled, and then he introduced the iPhone. He called it 3 things in one: a music player, a phone, and an internet device. Before that moment, phones were often crowded with small buttons, confusing menus, and features that were hard to understand. The iPhone felt different. You touched the screen and it responded. You swiped with your finger. You pinched and stretched to zoom in and out. It felt almost natural, like something your body already understood. Within a year, Apple opened the App Store. An app is a small program that you download onto your phone. The App Store gave the iPhone a whole new life. People could download apps for learning, for music, for traveling, for working, for staying connected with people they loved. A phone was no longer just a device for calling and sending messages. It had become a small world that lived in your pocket. For many young creators, writers, artists, and dreamers, the App Store became a doorway to something new. In 2010, Steve introduced the iPad. Some people did not understand it at first. They asked, "Why do we need a large phone that cannot make calls?" But Steve saw something different. He saw a screen for reading, for drawing, for watching films, for learning new things. He saw a device that was simpler than a laptop, but larger than a phone. Simple enough for a young child, powerful enough for a working adult. During these same years, Steve faced something deeply private. In 2003, doctors told him he had a rare form of cancer. It was a word that changes everything. At first, Steve searched for different ways to treat his illness. Later, he agreed to surgery. He returned to work. His body grew weaker over time, but his focus stayed sharp. His desire to keep building did not soften. If anything, facing illness made Steve more certain about what mattered and what did not. He knew his time was limited. He chose to use it well. By 2011, Apple had become one of the most valuable companies in the world. Millions of people around the globe used iPhones, iPads, and Mac computers every single day. But Steve's vision was bigger than any single product. He wanted all of Apple's devices to work together simply and quietly. A photo taken on your phone should appear automatically on your computer. A song on your tablet should play on your television. Technology should make life smoother, not more complicated. Steve also had a private world beyond Apple. He married Laureen Powell Jobs, who stood beside him through the brightest years and the most painful ones. Together, they had 3 children: Reed, Aaron, and Eve. He also had a daughter, Lisa, from an earlier relationship. Steve was not a perfect father, but over time, he tried to become more present, more honest, more patient, more open. As his health continued to weaken, Steve turned his thoughts to Apple's future. He knew that one person cannot carry a dream forever. So he worked closely with his team, especially with Tim Cook, preparing the next leaders carefully. His message stayed simple. Focus only on what truly matters. Innovation, which means bringing new ideas to life, is not about saying yes to every new thing. It is about having the courage to say no to almost everything, so that the most important thing can be done with complete care. In August 2011, Steve stepped down as CEO of Apple. It was one of the hardest decisions of his life. But it also showed a quieter kind of strength. The strength of knowing when to pass a dream forward to the next pair of hands. In his final months, Steve spent more time at home. The world knew him as a builder, an innovator, a force that had reshaped modern life. But near the end, he returned to simple things. Family, quiet rooms, music, sunlight moving through the windows, the sound of his children in the next room. His body was tired, but those who were close to him said his mind still reached forward, still curious, still alive. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away at the age of 56. Around the world, people felt the loss. They left flowers and handwritten notes outside Apple stores. They shared photographs and memories online. What they were mourning was not simply a businessman. They were mourning someone who had changed the way they worked, listened, learned, and connected with others. They were mourning a person who had believed deeply and completely that technology could be beautiful. In 2005, 6 years before he passed away, Steve Jobs stood before a crowd of young graduates at Stanford University in California. He did not give a cold lesson about business strategy. He did not talk about sales numbers or stock prices. Instead, he told 3 simple stories from his own life. The first story was about what he called connecting the dots. He remembered leaving college, then choosing to follow a calligraphy class simply because it interested him. At the time, it seemed completely useless. There was no practical reason to study beautiful handwriting. It had nothing to do with computers. But years later, when Steve was designing the Macintosh computer, he remembered every shape he had studied in that class. He remembered the space between letters, the warmth of certain fonts, the coldness of others. And so the Macintosh became the first personal computer to use beautiful, carefully designed fonts, the kind of fonts that writers and readers and designers loved. This is the small detail we promised you at the beginning of our story. Sometimes life teaches us something long before we understand why. Steve told the graduates, "You cannot connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backward. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future." His second story was about love and loss. He spoke about being pushed out of Apple, the company he had built with his own hands. It had hurt him deeply. It had felt like a terrible ending. But it was not an ending. It was a beginning in disguise. The pain opened space for new work, new learning, new direction. He discovered that he still loved what he did, and that love was stronger than failure. His third story was about death. After facing cancer, Steve understood with great clarity that time is not endless. This knowledge did not make him bitter. It made him clearer. He told the graduates, "Your time is limited. so don't waste it living someone else's life. Do not follow only noise. Do not follow fear. Do not follow the opinions of people who do not truly know you. Listen to your own heart. That, Steve believed, is where your real work waits. After Steve passed away, his influence did not disappear. It grew quieter, deeper, and wider. Apple continued to create new products and new ideas. But his true legacy, his true gift to the world, was bigger than any device. He showed that technology could feel human. He showed that beauty and usefulness could live in the same object. He showed that one person with a clear vision and genuine courage could change the direction of the world. Steve's life offers us simple lessons. Believe in your vision, even when others do not understand it. Keep learning, even from things that seem unrelated. Build with care every single time. And when you fall, and you will fall, begin again. Steve was not perfect. He made mistakes. He hurt people he loved. He struggled and failed publicly. But his life shows us something important. Focus, taste, and genuine courage can turn one small idea, born in one quiet garage, into something that reaches billions of hands. Steve Jobs began with uncertainty. He was placed in the arms of strangers. He dropped out of school. He was pushed out of his own company. And yet from all of that uncertainty, he built something that still lives in our pockets, our homes, and our daily routines. His story asks us a quiet question. What grows from the things we cannot yet explain? You are here, right now, listening to English, perhaps feeling uncertain about your progress, perhaps wondering if the words will ever come more easily. But think about what Steve discovered. The calligraphy class he chose simply because it felt right. He did not know why. He just followed his curiosity. And years later, that single choice changed the way the world reads words on a screen. Every lesson you choose, every story you listen to, every word you learn, these are your dots. You may not see how they connect yet, but they are connecting, slowly, quietly. And one day, they will form something you could not have imagined at the start. Keep listening. Keep learning. Trust the journey. Thank you for walking through this story with me today. I would love to know, which moment from Steve's life spoke to you the most? Was it his courage to begin, his strength to return after failure, or the quiet wisdom of his final years? Tell me in the comments below. If these stories help your English grow, please subscribe to Timeless Stories. New stories arrive every week. Thank you for being here, my friends. I will see you in the next journey.